I moved out to the lake to escape people like Karen and everything she represented: rules, control, and the constant need to stick her nose in everyone else's business. My cabin sat on 10 acres of pine dotted land that backed right onto the water, a place I'd fixed up with my own hands after years of hard work. I liked it quiet, liked it simple, and most of all, I liked it mine. But Karen, the self appointed queen of the HOA, had other ideas. For months, she'd been sending me letters claiming my property fell under her jurisdiction, demanding dues and citing regulations about landscaping, siding, and even the color of my porch light. I laughed at the first few, tossed them in the trash, and went back to fishing. But she didn't stop. The letters turned into threats, the threats turned into official-looking notices, and eventually a certified envelope showed up stamped with her name across the top. "This is your final warning," it read. "You will join the HOA within 7 days, or we will take enforcement action." Enforcement, what a word to use on a man living free on his own land. It would have been funny if it weren't so infuriating. I wasn't part of her HOA, had never signed a thing, and had the deed to prove it. But Karen wasn't the kind of person who let facts get in the way of her crusade. She saw my independence as an insult, a threat to the little empire she ran, and she wasn't going to stop until I bent the knee. I sat on my porch that morning, the 7th day since her so-called ultimatum, sipping black coffee while the mist rolled lazily off the lake. My Belgian Malinois, Rex, sat at my feet, ears twitching, nose testing the air like he knew something was coming. And maybe he did. Dogs like Rex have a sense about these things, a way of catching trouble before it shows its face. He growled low in his throat just before the sound of tires crunching gravel drifted up the driveway. A black pickup rolled in slow, 3 men climbing out like they owned the place. They weren't neighbors, too rough around the edges, too smug in the way they carried themselves. Hired muscle. The kind of men who thought intimidation was a business model. One of them, tall and broad, with sleeves of tattoos running down both arms, cracked his knuckles and called out, "You've been told to join the HOA. Today's the day. You make it official." His tone wasn't a request. The other 2 flanked him, one swinging a chain lazily, the other gripping a metal pipe like he was itching to use it. They thought I was going to be some easy mark, some pushover who'd cave the moment 3 strangers got loud on his porch. They didn't know I'd spent the last week preparing for exactly this. Rex padded down the steps, a low, steady growl rumbling from his chest, hackles raised and teeth glinting in the morning light. The men laughed, but I didn't. I set my mug down, leaned back in my chair, and let my hand rest casually against the shotgun propped against the doorframe. Karen wanted enforcement? She was about to learn she'd picked the wrong cabin. The 3 men didn't move at first, sizing me up the way wolves measure a stag before deciding if the kill is worth the effort, but Rex's growl never wavered, low and steady like a warning drumbeat rolling through the cabin yard. The tattooed one smirked, clearly the mouthpiece of the group, and stepped forward until his boots crunched just shy of my porch steps. "Karen says this is HOA land," he barked, trying to make his voice carry authority. "You've ignored her letters, her fines, her warnings. You're out of time. Either you sign today, or we'll make sure you regret it." He tapped the clipboard under his arm as if a piece of paper meant something here on my land, where I'd sunk every nail and hauled every log. I leaned forward slowly, my hand resting against the shotgun still propped by the doorframe, letting the sunlight glint off the polished steel, just enough for them to notice. "Boys," I said evenly, my voice calm as still water, "this is private property backed by a deed signed and sealed by the county. You don't belong here, and unless you want to spend the rest of the morning pulling Rex's teeth out of your hides, I suggest you get back in that truck and drive." The one with the chain laughed, a sharp, ugly sound, swinging it in a lazy arc as if to test my nerves. "You think your little mutt's going to stop us?" he sneered. Rex answered for me, lunging forward so fast the man stumbled back, chain clattering against his own leg as he scrambled. Rex stopped short, perfectly trained, his fangs bared just inches from the man's calf, saliva gleaming in the sunlight. The third guy, the one with the pipe, tense like he might actually try something, but that was when I picked up the shotgun in one smooth motion and rested it across my lap. I didn't aim, didn't need to. The sound of steel sliding against callous palms was enough to shift the whole balance of the standoff. Their eyes flicked between Rex, his hackles still raised, and the shotgun that gleamed with the quiet promise of consequences. I let the silence hang heavy before I spoke again, slower this time, each word deliberate. Karen sent you here thinking you could scare me into joining her little fiefdom. But this isn't HOA land. This is my land. And if you're too dumb to leave, then the sheriff will be happy to explain trespassing laws to you in handcuffs. They shifted uneasily, the bravado leaking out of them like air from a punctured tire. But pride kept their feet planted. You don't want to make this ugly, the tattooed leader muttered, though his voice had lost some of its bite. It's already ugly, I shot back, the second you let a bored housewife convince you to do her dirty work. Rex barked then, one sharp, explosive sound that made the chain holder jump again. I didn't take my eyes off the men as I reached back with one hand, pulling my phone from the porch railing. Sheriff's office? I said loud enough for them to hear. Yeah, I've got 3 armed trespassers on my property threatening me on behalf of the HOA. Send a unit. That was the crack that broke them. The chain hit the dirt, the pipe lowered, and even the tattooed one stepped back, his eyes darting to the truck as the reality sank in. Rex advanced one step. For every step they retreated, herding them like cattle until they reached their vehicle. I didn't lower the shotgun, not even when they muttered curses and slammed the doors. Tires spun gravel as they reversed out, the sound fading down the road, leaving only Rex's steady panting and the faint echo of their failure. But I knew this wasn't over. Karen wasn't the kind to give up after one setback. If anything, she'd double down. And when she did, I'd be ready, with Rex, the shotgun, and now the sheriff firmly on my side. The dust from their truck had barely settled when I heard the low hum of another engine on the gravel road, but this one was steadier, more official. A black and white county cruiser rolled into view, its lights flashing but siren off, and I felt the tension ease just a notch. Rex barked once, tail stiff, then sat back on his haunches beside me as if he already knew who it was. Sheriff Daniels climbed out, hat tilted low, his boots crunching deliberate steps as he scanned the yard. I'd known him for years, hunted with him once or twice, and if there was one thing Daniels hated more than paperwork, it was people who thought the law was just a suggestion. "Morning," he drawled, resting a hand on his belt as his sharp eyes landed on the tire marks, the scattered chain, and finally the shotgun still resting across my lap. "Got your call. Where are they now?" I gestured toward the dirt road, still carrying faint echoes of retreat. "Karen sent them," I said flatly. 3 goons with toys. Thought they'd bully me into joining her HOA. They just found out Rex doesn't negotiate. Daniels gave Rex a nod of respect, then squatted to pick up the chain lying in the dirt. He turned it over in his hands, jaw tightening, before he tossed it back down like it was garbage. "Sounds about right for her," he muttered. Then, as if on cue, a powder blue SUV whipped around the bend and screeched to a stop beside the cruiser. And there she was, Karen herself, storming out in all her glory, lips pursed, eyes blazing, clipboard clutched tight, like it was the Constitution itself. "Sheriff," she cried, pointing at me as if she were leading some grand crusade. "Arrest him immediately." He threatened my representatives with a firearm and allowed a dangerous animal to attack them. He's a menace to this community and must be forced into compliance with HOA law. Daniels didn't even look at me. He let her rant, arms folded, his expression carved from stone, until she finally ran out of steam. Then, slow and steady, he tipped his hat back and asked, "Karen, you do realize his property isn't part of your HOA, right?" That stopped her for a half second, but arrogance rushed in to fill the gap. "All land around this lake falls under my authority," she snapped, waving her clipboard. The association voted unanimously. Daniels cut her off with a sharp laugh, shaking his head. "The county clerk's office says otherwise. I've seen his deed signed and sealed. You have 0 jurisdiction here. What you do have," he added, voice turning hard as steel, "is a harassment complaint if you keep this up. Karen's face twisted, her fury boiling so hot it made her tremble. She tried to recover, throwing up her chin. But he brandished a firearm. "That's illegal," she sputtered. Daniel's gaze flicked to me, then back to her, and his voice carried the weight of a gavel. On his own porch, on his own land, when threatened by 3 men carrying weapons, that's not illegal. That's self-defense, and it's the only reason I'm not hauling your thugs to jail right now. Karen's mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air, but no sound came out. Daniel stepped forward, his shadow falling across her, and lowered his voice to a growl. "Let me make this clear. You set foot on this man's property again or send anyone else to do it, and I will personally make sure you're facing charges. HOA rules don't override state law. You want to play queen, do it in your own yard. But out here," he jabbed a thumb at the ground, "this land belongs to him. And that dog and that shotgun will always speak louder than your clipboard." Karen tried to sputter something about lawsuits, about knowing people, but it came out weak, pitiful. She stomped back to her SUV, slamming the door so hard the echo startled a flock of birds from the pines. Daniels watched her peel out, then turned back to me with the faintest smirk tugging at his lips. "You sure know how to stir a hornet's nest," he said. I chuckled, finally setting the shotgun back against the wall and scratching Rex behind the ears. "Wasn't me who stirred it," I replied. "Just built a cabin where I wanted and minded my own business." She's the one who keeps forgetting that freedom doesn't need permission slips. Daniels gave a slow nod, tipped his hat, and climbed back into his cruiser. As the sound of his engine faded, I stood on the porch with Rex at my side, the lake glittering in the morning sun. Karen had thrown her worst at me, and it still wasn't enough. Out here, law and land stood on my side, and no HOA president, clipboard or not, could ever take that away.